Good afternoon, everyone. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is the open ceremony of the International Youth Forum of Ayoka Fellowship. Um, it's been a long way until we've arrived here, and I want to especially thank Musa and Alexia to make this forum happen. Um, and well, I am Vivian Ogu. I am the president of Puerto de Africa and co-director of Ayoka Fellowship. The other co-director, Juan Jaime, he's the head of culture and education at Casa Africa, which is an institution from the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs in charge of public diplomacy between Spain and Africa. Cannot be with us today because he has a flight delay. He's been traveling all these months, so he apologizes because he's really excited with this project. He's really keen of all of our fellows, and he will enjoy a lot being here with us today. But unfortunately, he won't be able to accompany me in these initial words. So in the next 5 minutes, more or less, I'm gonna let you know a bit how Ayoka Fellowship was created and how it has been driven this last year. We have Gustavo from our team also here, who has been one of the key drivers of the project. So also thank you, Gustavo, for all your work. Afterwards, I'm going to introduce a bit today's agenda, and I think that we're going to have a bit of time between my introduction to this opening ceremony and the first panel, which will start at 6. And well, so Ayoka Fellowship. First of all, I have to say that Ayoka has two meanings in English and also in Dida. Well, not in English, in Yoruba and Dida has two meanings. First of all, in Yoruba, in Nigerian language, it means a person who brings joy. And in Dida, it means, which is a language from Ivory Coast, means welcome, hello. And it's used broadly to when you are happy of seeing someone and keen to collaborate with this person, right? So that was the key idea of Ayoka Fellowship. We wanted it to be a place for European and African leaders to co-create ideas and advance on the global challenges that we all have to work for. So we envisioned first in-person project in which during a couple of weeks all our fellows could meet up, receive trainings, receive mentoring, but unfortunately, first due to COVID-19 and then for different reasons, we finally started our first edition of the project online. And it's been, on the one hand, somehow difficult because it's not the same to facilitate co-creation and the connection between people from different cultures, which can appreciate the very thin differences and nurture themselves from the experiences of others. But at the same time, we have achieved to maintain a cohort of 12 fellows, all of them brilliant, every month giving us news of new projects, of awards, of a lot of different good outcomes of their projects. And we have also had the opportunity to facilitate them with certain tools. So, well, I don't know if you have read already a bit about Ayoka. Our fellows here know. Our first phase, the first phase of Ayoka Fellowship was focused on research. Why? Why we started with a research-based approach? Because Ayoka Fellowship was willing to facilitate co-creation of ideas to give a solution to systemic problems. And systemic problems cannot be approached without a thorough understanding of its basic problematics, the ideas that have been already tested across the world, which do function, which do not function, So we thought that facilitating this research and facilitating a first part in which each fellow could analyze deeply the root of their problematic and visualize how to advance on it will be positive. So we hope that in the next weeks you will have available their productions, which are really good, each of them. And after the research seminar, we went through more based approach. The problematic of the online connection was that not everyone could have stable connection all the time. So co-creation phase was a bit difficult in the sense, but we facilitated with different trainings and for different skills with leaders from across the world, from the Ayoka Network, from the European Commission, from the YALI, from the Obama Foundation, and etc. And also facilitated that the different leaders could exchange among them. Finally, we facilitated mentorship, connecting each fellow with a person that could bring them the best advice on how to continue with the work. And today we are already ready for closing up to see their insights on the systemic problematics that they are trying to address, their impact, and see how they envision the coming steps for transforming it. And well, again, I want to well, give a huge applaud to the team of Ayoka, a team of voluntary-based members who have worked very hard to ensure that this project is happening. So we had Ekua, who has been coordinating the fellowship, Gustavo, who has been one of the key project managers in charge of all the different phases, Elena Brunet, who is not with us today, but has also ensured the implementation of the first phases. Also, we've had with us Musa and Alexia with the international conferences and abroad, and some other persons that have been supporting in different steps. Now I would like to give the floor to Musa Oved, because he stated he wanted to share some words with you before this opening, before we finished with the opening, and then I'm gonna introduce the agenda of the following days.
Okay. Hey everybody. My name is Musa. And I would like Alexia. Sorry, I'll just pin us Alexia and myself. Excellent. So we'll just be explaining rapidly like what this forum in essence is about before the days. So basically the forum is one of the phases of the Ayoka Fellowship. And it is very important, right? Before our fellows will be able to graduate or finish their fellowship. So it is not only like a forum to listen to projects and a forum to really understand like what has been happening during the fellowship. It's also kind of like a graduation ceremony, if you like, for our fellows as well. I'll let Alexia say like the remaining things just so that you understand why we're doing this forum.
So, hi everyone. Would just like to for you to keep in mind that our objective with all of this and our wishes from the whole team was to like create opportunities and give the space to these fellows to continue to meet interesting experts and professionals that are also putting efforts on the international issues that they've been tackling. And that's why we really made efforts to find people that can bring value to the room and reflections and discuss with our fellows today. So just for everyone to keep in mind these things through the whole sessions. So yeah, that's it. And thanks everyone for coming to the opening.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy the entire days. Thank you.
Thank you, Lexi, and thank you, Musa. Gustavo, I don't know if you would like to say something too.
Well, I just would like to say that I'm very happy to see everyone that in the last year and a half, we had the opportunity to collaborate, to see you growing. And just as a marvelous wrap up, I think that this is an amazing opportunity to close things as it should be. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have enjoyed the whole process of the Ayoka Fellowship, and I hope you make the most of this last international conferences.
Thank you, Gustavo. So before presenting the agenda, I wanted to call to the attention to something before starting, because I think that that's also key within our fellowship, but also within the role of Puerta de Africa, our organization, which wants to bridge Africans and Europeans to facilitate transforming EU-Africa relations and also co-creation and training in these questions, right? And that's it, that, we know that there is an international imbalance between how Africans and Europeans live in the world. And sometimes from Europe, this imbalance is seen as that Africans are in need of help. What we wanted to demonstrate with this fellowship also was that African youth are already living a lot of projects, that the African civil society also have the tools to transform their own realities, to progress peacefully, and to build the societies they want. So we also wanted with Ayoka Fellowship that this was visible through the Spanish media. In this sense, we have achieved a couple of outcomes. So we were able to mainstream the projects of some of our fellows across the media of different NGOs, also in like local media all around Asturias, the Basque Country. Also, we facilitated the participation of some of our fellows in the radio. And that's what we want to continue doing. We want to continue facilitating that that the African leaders, together with also the European leaders, the youth leaders from across the world, because this is a question of joint work, can achieve to transform the societies that we all envision being transformed, right? There are a lot of injustices, but there are a lot of efforts and marvelous people working to end these injustices. So I think that if something we have to live with today is the willingness to make a big call to all funders, to all organizations, to bet and to invest in the projects of the youth, to invest in the project of the local agents, and to facilitate spaces for more collaboration and inequality between the leaders of the different societies. And now, yes, after saying this, I'm going to present a bit the topics we've been working with this last year, and the speakers we're going to have not only today, but also all the week that this forum will last. The first topic, and I think it's one of the most relevant topics, not only for us, but for the whole humanity, is migration, right? If there is something at the core of EU-Africa relations, is migration. And if there is something at the core of exchange, intellectual, physical, economic, etc., it's migration. And at the same time, migration is not being addressed properly in our societies, what is leading to a lot of people dying during their processes or suffering the consequences of a bad governance. So we wanted to see what the young leaders from both continents were doing And we have with us today Victor Mafeji, who is himself a young refugee from Congo in Uganda that has been creating an amazing space for refugees in a refugee camp in Uganda. And also Nuria Venero, who is leading the Madrid delegation of Luz Azul, which is a project that aims to facilitate the integration of young migrants in Spain and do something, I think, incredible, which is bridging different social classes, bridging the upper classes with the young migrants, so to facilitate human capital. But she's going to explain us more later. Tomorrow, we're going to have Amtu and Chioma, our two leaders in women empowerment. They are two amazing women with a lot of strength and that are working without stop to advance on the rights of women. Amtu in Ghana, leading the project she leads, while she's building her own political career, working with the United Nations and doing a lot of different stuff. She's an amazing person, and I hope that you will enjoy her. And Chioma, who from Nigeria is facilitating the entrance of young girls into the STEM field, also pursuing a political career and studying microbiology, well, doing a lot of challenging things. Women empowerment is fundamental because we are more than half of society. However, we don't have the same rights as a lot of men, right? So it's fundamental that we address the inequalities, so to create a better world and ensure that humanity can be fulfilled with all the potential. On Wednesday, we're going to have the sessions of youth empowerment with Daniela Quincille y Adedayo Adedoye. They are working to facilitate that young leaders, which are not the leaders of tomorrow, but the leaders of today, because the tomorrow starts every day working, that they can access the spaces of decision making and that they have the tools to impact positively their communities. This is also a fundamental topic because every day more, not only it's different in Europe and in Africa, of course. In Europe, young people are a minority in our societies, but every day more youth are a majority in Africa. And I always ask myself, what is going to happen when most of the ministerial cabinets are young people if we have not empowered them enough? Finally, in Thursday, well, not finally, but in Thursday, we have business, innovation, and learning. There has been a lot of conversations and debates on whether Africa has to go through the industrial revolution based on building fabrics and that, but there is a huge debate on how Africa can go through the digital revolution directly in order to create the million jobs that are necessary in the continent. So we're going to have John, Precious, and Mike sharing their activities in advancing in this field. And finally, in Friday, we're going to have health innovation with Tatiana, who has been working with her community to facilitate that girls have access to mental health and well, creating digital platform for that. So yes, now still we have 5 minutes. So I think that we're gonna stop during this 5 minutes and wait for our panelist to arrive, and then we're gonna start. Thanks a lot for coming to this project, for coming to this conference, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Thank you, Vivian.
So I see that Erendira is here already. Ishar is also here. Victor is here too. And Chioma is here. So what I will recommend you for enjoying this debate better is that you go to settings next to your video and that you enable the hide non-video participant option. So after doing this, you're gonna just be seeing the persons speaking, and the persons with the video open. So if everyone that is not going to be participating into this panel can close their video, you're just going to have, you're just going to see their faces, and the experience will be much better. And so while Erendira, Bisharo, Nuria, and Victor open their cameras, we wait. And once they do it, we're going to start. Fantastic. Fantastic. I see you here. So good afternoon again. Thank you, Bisharo and Erendira, to accompany us today, to accompany us in this debate about systemic challenges of migration. First, I'm going to introduce our fellow guest, and then our fellow Ayoka fellows. So I'm going to start with Erendira, who is a PhD researcher in political science at the European University Institute in Florence. She's studying about migration, and she has a background in political philosophy, global studies, and migration studies, and also sociology applied to immigration. So her main research interests are on the application of European immigration policies, especially regarding asylum. And she has been involved in different organizations and NGO advocating for the legal rights of asylum seekers, both in Europe and the US. Also with us, we have Bisharo Ali, who is a policy, gender, and migration expert, who is currently working at the International Organization for Migration in Kenya. She's both Kenyan and from Somalia, and she has a background in public policy and gender and development studies. She has more than 11 years of experience in development and humanitarian setting in Somalia, Kenya, Uganda, the Netherlands, and working with different NGOs and international organizations, governments, the academia, and etc. She's focused specifically in the fields of protection, gender equality, migration, governance, conflict, peace building, and human rights. And well, she's a feminist, she's a blogger, she's a well-recognized activist for youth and women's rights in Kenya and Somalia. And we appreciate both of you, and Enlita and Bisharo, to be here with us today. Thank you so much for making the effort of coming. And also we count with Victor Mafeji, who is an expert in social entrepreneurship and innovation, who is the founder of an organization based in Uganda to support the development of social innovation projects for young refugees, and also working with the communities that receive these refugees in order to transform their realities. And also Nuria Venero, that she's a social worker, and she is working with young non-accompanied migrants that arrive from Africa, especially the Maghreb, and in some cases sub-Saharan Africa, to Spain through the organization Luz Azul. And well, migration, as I was saying, is a very big topic and a topic that requires a lot of cooperation between our governments, but not also cooperation, but also political will which requires at the same time a shift in the mentality of the voters, right? Because one of the key problematics is that migrants do not generate votes, so they are used in politics and not count in politics as it might be in other spaces. So today we're going to have a discussion on systemic questions of migration. And what I would like, apart from hearing your amazing expertise, is that if it's possible, you start answering my question briefly, but that the most important part is that you can engage and debate, discuss with each of you to see which are the different perspectives that can be seen from Europe and from Africa, because I think that if it's something it's interesting from this conversation, apart from your profiles, background, and expertise, is that we are seeing the same challenge from different continents. And we try to, so we also can try to approach common, we can identify common points, also the challenges we identify, and if possible, make the proposals and the solutions that you're working with, or that you will propose to policymakers to advance on this question. So please, first I'm just gonna give you a round of words, but feel free to ask for the word and answer to what have been said. So we're gonna start with a very easy question that can put our audience into context. And this is why people migrate, right? There are a lot of different motivations for migration. There are a lot of different names, in fact, for migration. We can have migration, forced migration, forced displacement, asylum seeking, etc. So I will start with Erendira, asking you what are some of the key drivers of migration from Africa to Europe? Also, if you want to add, which are the key drivers of migration from Europe to Africa? If you are aware of that. If not, I hope someone else in this panel is going to be able to answer us, and how we can work together to address this underlying issue. Please, Erendira, you can start.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation for being here. I think it's a really important question to ask, and as you said before, reframe it in the kind of contextualize the concepts, because I think people, especially, I don't know in other parts of the world, but I know that in Europe, people start to use interchangeably concepts that are not entirely the same. And this has been actually used for political purposes quite a lot. I think one of the main key drivers has to do with development, but at the same time, it has to do with conflict. And it's not that easy to disentangle one from each other, because sometimes are these lacks of development or underdeveloped regions that because of this, certain conflicts arise for scarcities, and this drives forced displacement. In the mindset of the Europeans, everyone will come here, but actually most of that displacement, it's contained within the region. I think there is a lot of requests for asylums in this sense, coming to here for conflict. Also, and there is also the interest in education, right? This is something that we're not actually discussing quite much, the increasing need of, let's say, different education that the one people can have there. And also on the other side of the coin, which means Europeans, sometimes they go, whether it's for having this kind of volunteer work. There is a lot of migration that it's driven by volunteer work. There is also the increasing need of high-skilled migrants. So sometimes high-skilled Europeans go to Africa, but also we have the same. on both sides. So this is something that I think would help to demystify this idea that the only migrants that come from Africa to Europe are necessarily driven either by conflict or by scarcities of development.
Thank you so much, Rendira. I'm gonna hand the word to Visharo so she can also give us a more academic perspective on that. And then I'm gonna ask you, Nuria and Victor, if you can put down to earth everything that we are saying, and from your experience and what you've been talking with the different people you are working with, migrants in the one hand and refugees on the other, can complement this. So Visharo, the floor is yours.
Hello, you can hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, Vivian and the team, for inviting me to this timely conference. Indeed, migration is an important topic, and sometimes, you know, a very sensitive agenda. Just a disclaimer also, I will try to speak for the African continent, but it's quite a big continent, so I cannot say it's a reflection of everything. And I believe there's so much to learn from African continent itself. And I will just give you a brief snapshot. I would also like to emphasize here that the majority of African migrants are moving, you know, within the African continent. Also, my colleague has mentioned that. And especially, you know, for employment opportunities in the neighboring regional economic hubs. And the destination countries mostly are in South Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, you know, Nigeria, Kenya, among others. And in fact, about 80% of African migrants, you know, move within the continent and do not have that interest in leaving the continent as well, according to the African Migration Report of 2020. We also know that globally, African migrants account for 14% of global migration population, compared to, for example, 41% from Asia, 24% from Europe. And so less than 1/3, which is 27.2% of all African migrants, live in Europe. So that gives us something to think about, you know, during this discussion. So this basically indicates that not everyone from African continent is going to Europe, because there's this misconception actually that everyone wants to escape the continent, which is not true. So mostly migrants move within the region, as I've said. For example, Ugandans and Kenyan migrants move within East Africa and maybe towards Middle East, and usually try to explore regular pathways. I also need to distinguish here that every region in the continent may vary, and therefore different types of migration movement takes place in Africa. And they are, for example, driven by different reasons, but more or less they are the same. You may also find, for example, in East Africa, we talk about mixed migration migrants, which of course sometimes is irregular because of displacements. You find asylum seekers who are not able to get status, so they end up going through irregular pathways to reach Europe, for example, due to feeling, you know, of no options and limitations in the country, so they transition to another. And then you find in West Africa, there are more irregular migration movement which transition to human rights or human trafficking and smuggling. This could be because of the world displacement is changing. Even in Ukraine crisis in Europe, you have seen there is a shift in responsibility sharing on who does what, etc., etc. So this shifting the way people can access basic services and work as refugees, and if they don't get what they need, they basically move and transition to another. So there are several drivers of migration from African to Europe, and these are the push and the pull factors. And I'll just mention briefly a few of them. There's the economic reasons. You know, many African countries are facing economic challenges such as high employment rates, poverty, lack of opportunities, which leads, you know, some individuals to seek better economic opportunities in Europe. The essence of also political instability and conflict. You know, some African countries have experienced political instability. There's violence, there's conflict, which can result, you know, in people fleeing their homes in search of safety and security in Europe. The environment factors, which is very challenging now, climate change, environment degradation, can also have a very significant impact on livelihood, particularly in rural areas. Family reunification. We have seen many migrants move to Africa to reunite with family members who have already, you know, migrated to to Europe before. My colleague has also mentioned education and training. Some African migrants, of course, move to Europe to pursue education. I'm one of them. Sorry.
Please continue, Bishara.
Yeah. And so this kind of trainings, for example, that are not available in our home countries, we're able to exploit, for example, in Europe and other continents. Human trafficking, unfortunately, some migrants are forced or coerced into migration through human trafficking, which is a very major concern in some parts of Africa. So all these things, it's worth noting that motivation for migration can be complex. It is also interrelated, and individuals may have multiple reasons, for deciding to migrate, as I mentioned earlier. And of course, addressing these needs or requires a multifaceted approach that involves collaboration, cooperation between African and European countries, and all of this whole of government, whole of society approach to our intervention. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bishara. I think that both you and Erendira have said two really important things that should be at the core of our discussion today, And you've been speaking first about the types of migration that we can see from the type of movement, right? But also like the big question is why we do care so much about migration, right? And then you spoke about the question of irregular migration, and we can care about it from different perspectives. On the one hand, from a human-centered perspective, in which, we can see that a lot of people is undergoing very dangerous, is doing very dangerous trips in order to migrate, while at the same time, governments see it as a threat to national security because it transforms the ethnic component of the state, right? And that's something challenging. So we do care about migration on the one hand because it's a risk to human lives. On another hand, because transform how governance has to be done in the countries of destination, but also the question, the whole question of migration, right? So I wanted to ask now Victor and Nuria from their perspective, and starting with Nuria, because Victor has just disappeared for a second. From your experience, what are the main drivers for young people to migrate, and why we should care about that?
Thank you so much for having me today. Well, based on my experience, we can say that, first of all, economic instability in the continent is a big driving factor for young people to migrate towards Europe, but also their families, knowing that there is no such thing as decent job opportunities in where they live, sometimes because they live in very rural areas, so that they have to make this big trip to Europe to seek better opportunities, which are mostly not, they don't come true when they come to Europe, because obviously if they come from an irregular way, they are going to have a very difficult time like getting their ID in Spain and having a job permission. So it's very difficult for them to reach that thought that they had when they were coming to Spain. But also more and more young people who are coming to Spain, they realize themselves that they have to migrate because they can recognize in their context that it's not a great place to live, that the opportunities that they are having are not what they wish for themselves. So sometimes it's their families that just make them do their trip and like pay for everything. And some other times it's the young people themselves who are taking on this journey to seek better opportunities. So there's a very big variety in the reasons that they migrate in essence, but mostly seeking more of a peaceful environment, let's say, for growing up, as they are mostly kids, even though we try to see them as more grown-ups than they are, but they are kids and teenagers in the end.
So they are just trying to grow up in a more peaceful environment and to have better opportunities to grow up, to develop themselves, to have better education, as the colleagues were saying earlier. And so I think that's mostly, from my experience, what we have been observing here in Spain.
How old are more or less the kids that you're working with?
The public objective that we have, they are mostly from 16 to 20 years old, but obviously people can migrate from earlier on. So we have had cases of young people who have migrated at 11, or that they started their journey when they were like 10 years old and they finally came to Spain when they were like 14 or 15, and they had to spend all this time alone, like making all this dangerous route so that they could reach. So the average age that they come to Spain is around 15 to 16 years old, but they start their migrating journey way earlier.
And do you have any particular memory of something that one of these teenagers have told you that has impacted you on why they decided to start this process? What did they expected, or if there is a shift from what they expected to what they are living? Do you have any particular memory on that?
Most of them have the same realization, because obviously when they started thinking about this migration journey, as everyone, when you don't have the reality check, let's say, you always think that when you migrate, everything is going to be great. You will have protection from the government, you will have a job immediately, and you will have all your basic needs covered. But obviously, we always that reality was as great as that. But when they arrived to Spain, they realized that they are living in these protection centers and they are not taken care of properly. They are not given the same opportunities as the rest of the Spanish people, obviously, because they are foreigners, so they experience a lot of discrimination. There is also a lot of discrimination and racism against young foreign minors, because there's this belief that they are all criminals and that they come here to steal our jobs and like do very bad things, when in reality they just come here to have a better environment and grow up in peace. And so I think that most of them have this very bad realization that when they come here, nothing was as expected, and that they were like lied to, let's say, and like the people that helped their like smugglers, let's say, at the barriers, they were selling them very big dreams that never came true when they come here, because everything was very more difficult than they were expecting.
Thank you, Nuria. So we're going back to Africa. We're going to Uganda again, Victor. And I don't know, what can you explain us about the reason why people have to be displaced, have to move, and which are for you which have you seen and which have you experienced as the key reasons for that to happen?
I hope you hear me. I'm having network instability. However, I hope everything goes well. I think the question is, what are the reasons for migration? Because I did not catch the initial words. Good. Reasons, like for me, insecurity is the reason I'm right now in Uganda. My family was not in a safe place, so we decided to move out from DRC Congo because there are these security instabilities. Then there are also economic migrations that are happening. Even people here in the refugee settlements seeing that their lives are in need of progress, actually, to access more stability economically, in education. So people find it better again to be resettled to other countries, Europe and USA, Australia, something like that. When you use an example like my home country, so a lot of insecurities, rebels, war, and these are the reasons I can say that make people migrate places to other places. Like for me, I've spent now 11 years in Uganda. So it is not that I feel much more comfortable more than my country, because east to west, home is the best. So I keep on dreaming my home country, but then it seems that it is hard to go back because the country is not improving. So those are the reasons, unless if you have another question.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, so a second round of questions for Erendira and Bishara. And of course, Nuria and Victor, you can intervene if you have something to add to this. And if you can explain through your projects how you are contributing to the question I'm putting. But I would like to ask Erendira and Bishara, how can we ensure that migration is safe, orderly, and regular? I think that this is a claim that we're all the time doing from the from the social movements, and people don't really understand what that means. What that means, safe, orderly, and regular pathways for migration. How that is seen into life. How will be the life of a migrant that today is taking a boat, and with the opening of more path, won't have to undergo such a difficult and dangerous trip, right? And how can we ensure, and I think that's more like a political question, but how can we ensure that rights and dignity of the migrants, and especially this coming year, that across Europe we're going to have lots of elections, and next year we're going to have the European elections. But also I would like to pay attention to the context also of African countries. Bishara, maybe you can illuminate us with the policies within the Kenyan government and the Somali government to ensure these pathways for migration, because at the end there is a strong movement all the time between Somalia and Kenya and Uganda, right? And there is this circular and permanent migration, and also now with the new project of the African Union, technically there will be open migration for everyone across the continent in order to build the market. So yeah, how can we ensure that? And Indira, if you want to start.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning, Vivian. The whole idea of the lack of political will is, I think it's the main issue, that we so far haven't reached that possibility, at least as one would like. There are some treaties, yes, but there have not been like properly enforced. And I think this idea of what would be the ideal pathway, in this sense, we need legal channels. Those need political will, which need voters. So the citizenship at the same side reclaiming this. Because if this is not a clientele to which certain politicians cannot appeal to, the claim, it would be instead, let's open pathways that can be safe for actually having regular channels for migrants, not putting their lives into danger, respecting their dignity along the way. And at the same side, it could be it's a two-way. It should be a two-way contribution. I mean, Europe does need the skills and the different, even the cultural insights that other people can bring. And the idea would be having an actual program that would allow them also to go back. One of the main issues now of really some high numbers of irregular people in Europe is because actually some of them might had at some point even legal permit of stay, and at some point that wouldn't that possibility was not renovated, so they stayed. So this is one of the things that have been proven a lot, for example, with the Bracero program in the US for Mexicans. So there are a lot of Mexicans there just because they couldn't go back. And this is an issue that now we don't have this regular, safe, circular migration that we would like, and that we could all be benefited from. So I think this is one of the very first issues that should be tackled from the height of on the behalf of the citizenship to reclaim this, and also because at the end there is this increasing cooperation between certain leaders from Europe and Africa, but might not be for the best way. So, for example, we have the foreign minister of Italy, which is where I'm living now, going all the way to Libya, to Tunisia, to Egypt, and to try to convince all the rest of European governments to sign even more treaties of externalization for migrants to be contained in that side. The more that containment will happen there, it is true that will reduce the numbers, but it is true that the journeys become more dangerous. So the more they do treaties, for example, like the one in Turkey, then and the more the Greek coast guards go against migrants and intercept them, we have fatalities like the things that the horrendous news that we had some weeks ago in the south of Italy. So they have to take longer routes, more dangerous ones. And at the end, I think the whole idea of migration is to let people be agents of themselves. Everyone should have the possibility to decide to improve their life with a set of options that can be given in a safe and orderly way. This could benefit pretty much everyone at the same time. If you have increasing regularizations in countries, you also have the possibility to, and this is maybe just a way to appeal governments, you can actually collect more taxes, which is something that so far, and this is already tested with increasing programs. So there are many incentives that we can give, but this also has to be, I think, on my perspective, a will that has to come also from the citizenship. We need to push governments to do that. We need to push that political will to actually stop doing this kind of treaties to externalize security, to treat migration as a security issue and not as a humanitarian one, and instead doing treaties that would allow a more safe and circular way of migration.
Thank you, Indira. And in fact, you were stating the Ukrainian crisis, and we have seen that it's possible to do that, and that European countries have the tools indeed to facilitate, for example, the temporary asylum protection directive for shocks, but also many national regulations propose that people can access to asylum from the embassies, but then is at the discretion of the different ambassadors and personnel working to decide whether that happens or not. And even the irregular migration figures are tiny, yet all these people is not having access to safe, for example, humanitarian corridors when migration happens because of conflict or climate change and the loss of livelihoods, etc. Bisharo, what's your perspective on this, and how is this done between Kenya and Somalia, for instance?
Yeah, thank you very much. in addition to what my colleague has said, I think ensuring that migration is safe, orderly, and regular, and that human rights and dignity are respected at all times requires this kind of holistic, comprehensive approach that involves, different range of stakeholders, including the governments, international organizations, civil society, I would say academia, and migrants themselves. This is very essential. And we have seen that even now with migration flows within Somalia, Kenya, and the Horn, basically, if you don't involve these different stakeholders, then there is a problem, there is a challenge. They will not be able to solve issues in silos. And we decided to work together to see that there are regular pathways that enable, migrants to move freely, but also there's this initiative from the region, but also in the continent, have this kind of consultative processes with all these stakeholders, reinforce this African free trade movement, also the African, free movement treaty that is established by the EU. So all these things play part. And I will say first, there is this already global compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration, the GCM, which was adopted in 2018 by member states in Marrakesh, Morocco. And IOM actually is leading agency to ensure that it's coordinated and also follow up with member states to ensure that it is implementing, this framework and tool. So this framework and tool is basically a guide to member states to speak with the same voice. So for example, for states to understand that if someone or migrant or asylum seekers comes to the border of a country, they should be able to create legal pathways so that they don't find themselves migrating in irregular circumstances. A lot of this happens, because of policing, barriers to free movements, externalizations, which my colleagues have said, securitization of the borders. Vivian has also emphasized this. So creating legal pathways for regional workers is very essential, because we see highly skilled people workers. They are able to move easily because they are able to, have this documentation and be able to fit in the criteria. But low skills are more likely to use other pathways because of these limiting barriers. And I think each country needs to change their perspective on migration. This is where we need to start first. There is this growing view that migrants in Europe, for example, are causing trouble. They're associated with committing crimes. There is this need to, to do a job. For example, I mean that we need to do a lot of things for the countries, especially in Europe, to educate their people that migrants are not a threat. But they contribute to the economy, they contribute, to the industries, to the sectors like agriculture, health, and this means less securitization, as we have seen in all the policies that have been coming up. So creating a situation that will not put, for example, migrants in trouble each time, but of course, ensuring that they meet legal requirement to be in a country. Also to note that no one can stop migration. We cannot put barriers and say, no, we don't want people not to move from Africa to Europe, but managing migration is the way to go. So governments can create legal and safe migration pathways that allow migrants to, move in a regular manner, but also this may include things like visas, work permits, and other forms of legal status to migration. Very essential, good political governance and political will to enhance opportunities, to reduce this kind of chances by protecting migrants' rights. They can enforce and adopt, laws and policies that protect the rights of migrants, including right to, for example, work, access healthcare, freedom from exploitation and discrimination, and so forth. So working towards, I think, economic stability to reduce vulnerability and poverty is very essential by promoting this kind of, integration and social inclusion by government, but also civil society. And our colleague Victor, and Nuri have also mentioned this and how they can promote this social and economic integration of migrants so that they can contribute fully to their host communities. I would also say it's very important to increase awareness and understanding of migration issues, within the communities and so forth. But overall, I will finish here by saying ensuring migration is safe, orderly, and regular, and that human rights and dignity are respected at all times requires long-term commitment from stakeholders, and also recognition that migration is a complex issue that requires also comprehensive response. And we cannot work alone, we need to work together. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a question to Erendira, because I'm not sure whether our audience is familiar with the question of securitization of migration. So maybe Erendira can explain it a little bit. And then I'm gonna ask, in this sense, Nuria Venero, maybe to introduce a bit or introduce your project in this sense, because I think that it connects directly with the question of ensuring the rights and dignity of migrants. And Victor, I'm going to invite you to present your project for the next round of questions, but also please, if you can add to this topic, to this debate, with your personal experience, with the experience of the people you're working with, how the different persons that live in the refugee camp you're working, and the different refugee camps you are starting to develop connections with, have developed like this migration, if they found support from the from international organizations or governments, if in contrary they were prosecuted, yeah. So yes, we go first with Erendira, then with Nuria, and then with Victor. And Erendira, if you can do it shortly, just a light introduction to our audience, that will be great.
Yeah, I think we can even use with the examples that Bisharo and Nuria already gave, because I think are quite easy to follow. Securitization just basically means when something is treated as a security threat. So in this case, immigrants are portrayed as a potential threat to the security of the society, of the country. So basically, every time that this discourse plays on how they can be a security to X and Y. In this case, it can range, and the political discourse in Europe, for example, it can range from they are criminals, or they are potential, especially with men. This is actually highly ethnical, racialized issue. Also with the gender, men are potential sexual threats to women. They can be they are potential threats to the Western society, whatever that is, because they have primarily other religions or other kind of customs. So in this sense, they're portrayed as a cultural threat, but always in the sense of being a security threat. So as long as they keep doing these discourses, these narratives, that enables them to politically devise certain things like treaties that will allow them to police more the borders, or even police within the borders. That is something that we're increasingly seeing in Europe, like a lot of racial profiling now, with the AI, artificial intelligence, even the whole racial profiling. So this is a natural, really big issue. As long as immigration keeps seeing it as a threat, or as the most important issue that the government needs to address, this enables the government or certain political figures to use these discourses, I think. And just on that note, I wanted to come back just to something that Bisharo mentioned about the Global Compact. It would be interesting to connect these things with the fact that actually most of European countries didn't sign it. And they had a lot of really big issues, among them the European member states, because they didn't want to sign it as the European Union. And just some of them decided that to create legal and safe pathways, while others are choosing to continue to portray immigration as a security threat.
Yeah, that's very important. What militarizing the management of migration, right? Because when we treat something as a security threat, the response is a military security. So what we are seeing is that there are a lot of increasing militarization of borders, and migrants are contained as if they were jihadist. Like if a young migrant of 16 years old that is just wishing to have a PlayStation and go to the best high school possible was a national security threat, right? That's one of the big questions. Thanks so much, Erendira, for explaining it. And Nuria, I don't know if you want to introduce a bit your the work that Luz Azul is doing in ensuring the rights and dignity of migrants in this sense.
Yes, so just to briefly introduce my NGO, what we try to do is to ensure, as Vivian was saying, that the young migrants that just turn 18, because in Spain they are legally protected by the government until they are 18 years old, but after that they are left unprotected because they are that they were living in, and they are just facing the truth of being an immigrant in Spain, which is having no job, being in fear that they are going to be kicked out of the country if they don't get to renew their residence permit. They don't have access to healthcare because they are not contributing to social security. And they obviously are in a very vulnerable situation when they are just turning 18, which none other, well, not someone else is having that situation, but it's not common for Spanish people to have to face all these difficulties when they are turning 18 years old, because we are basically just kids and we are very protected by our families. But these people that have migrated when they were minors, they are not. They don't have any network and they don't have any support from their families or friends. So what we're trying to do is like trying to that knowing that Spain is not doing as much as it should to protect and guarantee basic human rights to these young migrants, we are trying to guarantee that for them. So, for example, giving the tools so that they can renew their residence permit, because obviously when you are reading the conditions that you have for renewing your residence permit, everything is a very legal text and very difficult to understand. How can you expect people whose first language is not Spanish and who also have no knowledge of legal stuff to understand that kind of text and to be able to have all the requirements to solicit a new permit? On how can you expect these people to do that if you don't give them the tools? So that's what we're trying to do. I will talk about it more deeply later, but just to briefly introduce, we are trying to get everything covered up, knowing that Spain is putting all these obstacles for regular and safe migration.
Thank you, Nuria. I don't know, Victor, if you want to add something about the question of safe, orderly, and regular migration, or if you're willing to go to the next question.
A simple highlight from experience, we've seen people who have been resettled and come back to the refugee settlement. Why? Because they face kind of racism in Europe, and they feel like this is not a safe place for us. And it depends on how people will come, how people are interpreted. You know, these integration policies, okay, even education of the population. You know, to some extent, there is a way one would, even in a legal way, would migrate using UNHCR means and IOM and go. There is a man who was actually living here in Akivale. Then he was resettled with his family, and he went to Denmark. And a year did not end when he came back, and he was like, no, I cannot live there. So the integration processes, the way he felt as home was the problem. So how will that also be given consideration? How would even, because we will not escape migration, and one of the call and the reminder would be that when you go back in the years, Africans were not migrating to Europe. It is of recent that migrations have started Europe and other countries, in Africa and other countries. In the past days, I remember, I think it was after the Second World War, Italians were
Unfortunately, the connection of Victor is being a bit unstable right now. So while he's coming back, we move to the last question. The last two questions. Well, first, what is for you, Bishara and Erendira, what the role that the private sector can play in supporting migrant integration? And then I'm going to also ask Nuria and Victor on that, because they are in part the private sector, or creating and facilitating the private sector building this. So Bishara, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. First, I think private sector complements government capacity building or capacity development for migrants to adapt and cope in new environments. We have seen a lot of private sectors who have partnered with NGOs and government to support migrant integration, such as providing, for example, funding for programs, or collaborating on-job trainings initiatives, providing internship, apprenticeship to migrants, which can help them, gain work experience and also develop their skills. This is very relevant, especially in East Africa. A lot of private sectors are now engaging different migrants, giving them skills, and then they're able to, integrate them within the market system. There is also fight against migrants, exploitation, and also vulnerability. We've seen a lot of advocacy, social advocacy that is done. There is also a sense of humanitarian assistance when it is required, especially on education, health, water provisions. Private sectors are mostly upfront on this. Also in Kenya, I've seen this that cultivation of entrepreneurship program and innovation skills to complement, this existing ones for better survival of vulnerable migrants. So they can provide language skills and trainings. For example, some of the Somalis who come in as migrants here, they are not able to speak the local language. And so it's very hard for them to integrate within the community. So by giving them language skills, then they are able to cope and develop skills that will help them succeed in the workforce. We've also seen that private sector can promote diversity and inclusion by welcoming them an inclusive work culture, and building this kind of trust and fostering integration. So very important aspect. Also, we've seen we see migrants as contributors to the economic development, very important. The Somali community in Kenya at the forefront of, developing the economy of Kenya and fast-tracking it in so many ways. So because of their skills that they've gained through private sector, I think, for example, in Europe, I'm sure there are some skills that, they don't do, or they don't normally do. For example, farming, factory work industries, and private sectors in this case should come in to explore pathways where they should support industries that build this, economy. For example, in France, in Spain, and Italy, I know that the industry of farming is, booming there. So they can also look at the value of having different migrants and their skills that contribute to their economy. I know of this program in America. It's a very long-term program since 1950, and I think they still have it. It's called a Bracero program. It is with Mexican farmers. They got visas and permits to work during a season, I think planting or harvesting season of fruits and vegetables, and then they return back. So it was a legal pathway. So this can also be established, within Africa, but also with Africa and Europe. It can be very beneficial. We can have countries, for example, like Spain and Senegal or other Spanish countries to benefit, to connect together and benefit in the long run. So I think, and I'm sure that some countries have skills labor migrants moving for different sectors, but they can do this to expand in other sectors that have gaps. For example, in health issues, because we know most African foreigners in Europe work in health industries, together with, of course, Latin Americans and Philippines with a higher percentage. So overall, I will just say that private sector has the potential and make a significant contribution to supporting migrants' integration and also creating opportunities for economic empowerment, but also working with other stakeholders such as the government, the NGOs, the migrants themselves, can help to promote a more inclusive and prosperous society. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Visharo. What's your answer to this, Erendira?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Visharo, I think, covered pretty much all. I just wanted to add, interestingly, in the case of Europe, for example, it could even enforce the rule of law. There is a lot of agricultural exploitation happening, especially, for example, in Spain and in Italy. And increasingly, they are using asylum seekers and refugees for this kind of exploitation. So this could, having a proper private sector, would enforce a more dignified work, and that could follow actually even the legal labor law for each country. So this could be even more dignified, and it would enhance not only the pure economic empowerment and the economic integration, but also even the integration to the whole community, which at the end should be one of the last goals of economic integration, having social integration. That is, I think, some detail that Victor's comment did before, why people sometimes comes back, even if that can be even more prejudicial toward their well-being, is because they need also that social enforcement, that cohesion, that they are part of that society. If I'm participating economically on that society, I expect somehow to be included in that society. I don't expect to receive discrimination or racism whatsoever. So I think this is a really important part. They are small programs. In Italy, they have the Decreto Flussi, that is a kind of the Bracero guest working program. The problem is that by lack of political will, it's only enforced in certain regions. And sometimes in the regions that it falls is where the agricultural exploitation is under the hands of the mafia. So these are things that I think with good collaboration and cooperation with different stakeholders on government level, with NGOs, humanitarian associations, this could actually help them to blossom. And also even the society itself, it has been proven by many studies that having a more diverse workforce actually boosts innovation. That this is actually really important in certain sectors, like, for example, the technological ones. So, yeah.
Thank you, Erendira. I don't know, Victor, if you want to add something to this on how the private sector can contribute to the question of migration and refugeedom in your case.
I think it's a way to go as far as integration of the migrants are concerned, because maybe I can also share from my story. Why did I start this? Like you say, I came to Uganda, and I was quite very young, and I was looking for things to do because I wanted to economically thrive somehow, and I started different initiatives that did fail at first. Then in that time I was living in Kampala, and then my family relocated to Nakivale refugee settlements. It's a camp. It's not actually in Uganda. There are no refugee camps. There are settlements where refugees are living side by side with the host community. So this is where we were relocated, and I had nothing to do. So I actually started seeing my life degenerating, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? We had limited opportunities to employment, to education, to like it was actually almost going to a nightmare itself, moving forth and back to Kampala at least to see what I can do. And then I learned social entrepreneurship, and I was like, okay, I'm able to start my own business, but I have my fellow guys here who cannot start anything. So that's why I was like, okay, I think this is okay. What I've gained, let me transfer it to the rest of the community in 2016. So this is when I started the journey. What did I see from that time? I saw refugees taking charge of themselves. You see, the idea it is to first what I came to realize that private sector is you see it's more of how can you benefit me and how can we benefit you, because when it comes to I heard they're speaking about the social cohesion. The social cohesion actually does not care who is the person as long as contribute to each other. And if you have your company and you need labor, so you do not need to know who is this person if I have value to contribute to your business. So that's why for me sometimes I take private sector as an integration tool for the refugees. We had people who had never moved from the refugee settlements until when they started some businesses around. They had never interacted with Uganda, but because they have started businesses, they started interacting, because when they need the raw materials, they need Ugandans. And the Ugandans have got market. So there is that kind of interaction. For me, I think the private sector is bringing and is building. And I love the way Uganda has given the refugees this opportunity. I think Uganda is praised for that because refugees are actually able to start their own companies, start their own businesses, even their own, like myself, I'm a testimony. I was fearing if I'm to start this, am I going to register legally? But then I have now 3 businesses registered. So when you see, it's also reducing conflicts among the refugees and the host community.
Thank you.
So for me, I would really, really encourage private sector.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, so we have only 5 minutes before Nuria and Victor have to present us our projects. So I'm gonna finish with one last question that I would like you to address very fast, with key ideas that our audience can retain and can plan to work for. So as it was before, first Erendira and Bisharo, you can start. The one who wants first. Nuria, Victor, if you want to add something, you're completely welcome to that, because this last question, I think it's fundamental. How can we ensure, on the one hand, better improved governance cooperation between European and African governments, and maybe not the type of UK-Rwanda cooperation, or maybe yes. It all depends on the standards that we ensure the migrants, right? How do we ensure better governance cooperation for migration between European governments and African governments? And also, how do we ensure it between the citizenship? So how people from Europe and people from Africa together, Nuria, Victor, how you together can facilitate this process to be more human, more fair, and to not cost lives while continue contributing to global development. So in 1 minute to 2 minutes. Erendira.
Okay. Yeah, I will try to be fast. I think I will come back to my idea of the beginning. There has to be a lot of citizenship involvement to be pushing for the governments, for the politicians to actually do better. They can do better. We saw with the Ukrainians, they have even more numbers here and it has been managed. So it can be done. Also in this sense, I think people, at least like as I can see it from Europe, they need to begin to open themselves a little bit more to learn and start demanding that the only assimilation that needs, or the only integration that needs to be done, it's on behalf of the migrants. Like they need to also open themselves to try to engage in a dialogue. It cannot be just a one-way formula. So I think this is a project in which in your projects you can enhance a lot of this, like the communication between the locals and the migrants. And we need to demand this. I think it needs to be a thing that as citizens, somehow we need to demand this in a political way to ensure this better governance that follows even more democratic stances.
Bishara?
Yeah, thank you. I also believe that change basically has to come within the countries to be able to see the positive impacts of migration within the economy and not see migrants as enemy of the states. So we have this narrative, I'll say, that African migrants are not good migrants. And when you look at the Ukrainian situation, they are seen better off to integrate. So we should have a tendency of always looking at migrants for what they are and not look at them from, you know, their skin color and where they come from and put them in this one box. So governments, EU, in the EU and AU need to have this honest conversation and how they can change this rhetoric on migrants themselves, because you cannot develop policies but the policies can lead to animosity, you know, towards migrants if it's not that well. So the same, you know, I'll say happened to Brexit, you know, because they started saying that foreigners are taking our jobs and they started limiting permits for Commonwealth countries and now Europe. So these accompanies the example of when we introduce policies that do not work with countries' values and economic needs, then you have a challenge. So we need to really have honest conversation. And I believe Africa does want to work, you know, with legal pathways, but because of this negative, I'll say, reception we get towards migrants, it is difficult to have conversation if one is using positive way and the other one is using the negative way. So maybe the government have these policies, but the people who are initiating and implementing these policies don't. So therefore, fostering these dialogues, I would say, or inclusive dialogues, and having governments, include citizens, civil societies, and other stakeholders, also migrants, is important. This can help build trust, create and also share understanding of challenges and opportunities that comes under migration. And I will also say just briefly here, developing, joint policies towards, effective migration governance is beneficial for all. For example, EU have always tried to address the migration by addressing root causes of migration from Africa by creating these funds, for development through partnership. This, according to my understanding, I would say it has flopped because it is geared towards preventing migration to Europe. And this has contributed, in my opinion, to irregular migration and even risk loss of lives, as we have seen over the years. So the deficit of, for example, availability of opportunities can be complementary, considering the future of population and also the development of the two regions, because, of course, promoting regional cooperation between Africa and Europe by sharing, for example, best practices to address migration issues and also to promote sustainable development, I believe is very crucial. And overall, I'll just say improving collaboration, between European and African governments and its citizens is essential for developing, for example, effective, fair, and right-based migration policies. But this basically requires, as Erinda said, a long-term commitment to sustainable development, human rights, regional cooperation, as well as recognition of the role that migrants play in contributing to the socio and economic development of both regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bisharo. So I hope that Nuria and Victor can answer to this question at the end of their presentation. So what do you need from government? What do you need from the citizenship, and how do you think they can work together? But for now, I would like to thank a lot Arendira and Bisharo for your interventions. I hope that after the presentation of the Fellows projects, we can have a smooth conversation on how they are impacting these policies, and even go back to some systemic questions in case we do see indeed systemic impact on their projects, whether they could be scaled up. Well, we would love to have your full picture on that, and that from their experiences and efforts, we can continue this conversation. So 10 minutes each, Nuria and Victor. And I will allow Victor to start if that's okay. Then Nuria. Then we're gonna have the feedback from Arendira and Bishara on Victor's topic. Then Nuria will present, and well, no, we're gonna do differently. First Victor, first Nuria, and then we have the feedback from Arendira and Bishara. So Victor, whenever you want.
Oh, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, I'm happy to be here first, and I'm happy to. Actually, the conversation was very, very interesting. Lots of learning. I'm really happy. Okay. For the people who do not know, I'm co-founder of Unleashed Potentials in Motion, a refugee-led organization that is operating in Uganda since 2018. I first co-founded the first opportunity hub called Opportunity for Refugees in 2016. Then I co-founded again Unleashed, that is empowering the refugees in leadership and catalyzing social entrepreneurship to improve the livelihood of the refugees and the host community. So we do this through a model, a concept that is very easy, starting by the one that we call the Reform, that is supporting the refugees becoming more people. When they become refugees, they get traumatized. Others, they develop a dependency mindset. There is a lot that happens there in the middle that makes many of the refugees being inactive. So the first stage that we call the Reform gives a new shape to the person, new perspectives, and also empowers them into leadership. They overcome their limiting beliefs and take the responsibility, and we make them ready to contribute, because social entrepreneurship is all about contribution. So from that stage, we also actually in the same stage, we bring in different mindset sessions that support the potential entrepreneurs to get ready, like financial education and how they do their daily planning, just these simple basic things that support people to get ready for entrepreneurship. The second stage is the incubate, where the potential entrepreneurs are given sessions and trainings around ideation, when they see the local problems and they develop solutions for them in the way of creating impact. So the ones that become concrete and feasible are actually prototyped, because they are given a prototyping fund, and then they undergo the prototyping phase, where they test with the community their products, and they see how are the potential customers reacting toward them. And when they start growing small revenues, we now push them to the U Accelerate, where the ideas and what they've been doing, it can be put into an acceleration phase in the way that they can be formalized, commercialized, and we see how the business will grow. And then from that this stage, they actually access executive trainings that are more specific to what they are doing in the industry they are dealing in. We also attract people who can support them, attract different stakeholders who can support the business grow. And we see how they can also be investment ready. We are actually introducing this year. We are still developing it, but then we are ready to go. Only that we are missing different components like funding, but we are introducing an investment fund. Why? Because we came to realize that these people, when they are developing their social enterprises, they need access to funding. Yes, we have banks, but then the banks, it's not easy to access the funding because of the collaterals, different other things. So we would like to bring in our own investment that will be actually pushing them, catalyzing what they are doing, maybe to make them financial institution ready, in the way that they can now access some bigger funding from the financial institutions. Above all this, all the people who have undergone Unleashed, we have created a community of alumni where people actually gather to share experience. There are people who were not able to create social enterprises, but who have access to work. There are other people who are still not able to access work or even start a social enterprise. But we are still a family where we meet and then we get inspiration from each other. And we call that the U League. We even invite people, inspiration and motivation speakers, and people to share their experiences to boost the community, or our community into becoming social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. Analytic programs, we came to identify 2 to 3 things. Number one, women were actually struggling to create social enterprises because we actually, at the first time, we thought maybe they are not coping with it, but then we came to realize it was more of their day-to-day calls from the families, from anything that would be hindering them. And we designed a social entrepreneurship program for them that we called ULEDs. And actually, we launched it last year in December. And actually, we saw for the first time limited number of drops, because in the past we've been mixing both of them, and then they were having different requirements from their homes, from there. And then we saw only men taking the lead and the progressing. But now we had women, and we had a customized program for them, and we were able actually to graduate people, like 21 of them, who have accessed the social entrepreneurship program. And we're actually pushing that forward to see how we can go with them. We also have the U Labs. The U Labs, that is, we would like to equip the refugees and the host community with digital skills, but then also initiating or even supporting them to create digital employment. We're actually looking at how can we also find digital employments linkages around Uganda or even outside, because I know actually in countries like Europe, people from here can still access work from the outside countries, if most especially the digital works. But then we are also using the same ULAB to digitalize social enterprises, even the local businesses, because people are still doing it in a traditional way. They still write in the books. So we are actually looking forward how the ULAB would support the whole. Well, apart from that, we also have many other engagements in our community, like we organize tournaments, football tournament, because we're actually driving the message of social cohesion. We would like to finding opportunities how refugees and host community can work together. So we do this through art festivals. We also do this through football organizations, among other many activities. So far, we've been able to give 149 scholarships to the refugees and 127 people have been reached directly through our consultancy. Now this is through other programs like the business development services, like the social cohesion programs and other. And we've been able to create actually 107 employment, 39 projects or businesses incubated, and 10 enterprises accelerated. And the number we've reached actually through the whole that we do is like 6,000, most especially in events that we do organize. I can give one example. That's Botanica. He came as a scholar. He identified the problem, malaria infection, within our community. And he had a passion of becoming a doctor, but he couldn't continue with his education. But now he has started a business called Botanica Repellent that is repelling mosquitoes just by smearing the gel. So this is a happiness. We've seen many kind of entrepreneurs who are doing the same, even people who have dropped out of school. So our future plan is to actually expand our services in the Nakivale refugee settlement, even in Uganda, in other refugee settlements. And if we get the right support, we can also expand it to the African continent, because we've tested our model and we've seen how it is impacting people's lives, people taking initiatives and transforming their lives in their local communities. I've been very happy to be among the people who were selected for the Ayoka Fellowship. I've learned a lot, actually meeting different people and also learning from their initiatives, what they are doing in different corners of the world. I appreciate most especially the systemic change. Why? Because when you look at my involvement as a leader in this community, we actually face many problems. And without a systemic change, we see actually things becoming very worse. And being part of the Ayoka Fellowship, it has supported me actually to stand actually and also advocate for the rights of the refugees. One thing I came to identify, even these NGOs and other INGOs that come, they do not integrate refugees. So they design our solutions without us. But now we are pushing forward to see if we can be the center of the design, supporting and showing what we're doing. Even there, we are also facing the other challenges that we would like also to solve. So I hope to get the best from this. I'll be happy to also respond to questions if you have some. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. Okay, Nuria, your turn, and then we listen to our guests.
Okay, so my NGO is called Luz Azul. It was founded in 2020, and our first aim or objective was way different than what we ended up doing, but because of the global pandemic, we had to completely change our focus. So right now, what we are focusing on is helping young migrants who are mostly unaccompanied foreign minors who come to Spain when they are underage and they are protected by a Spanish government until they turn 18. We discovered that they were a very vulnerable population in Spain, because as I was saying earlier, when they turn 18, they are just kicked out of where they were living, and they are facing many problems such as not having a job. Many of them haven't even finished their secondary studies yet, so they just cannot continue because they don't have the fundings to keep with all the cost of being a student. They also don't have a place to live, so many of them face homelessness very early on when they just leave these centers in which they live in. They also, most of them don't have the skills that are required to work in Spain right now. So for example, they don't have a driving license, obviously, because it's very expensive. They don't speak Spanish that well. Most of them don't even have a third language, because in this case, they also speak their first language, Spanish, and also a third language that can help them have a job such as English or French maybe. So it's very difficult for them to improve and to develop in the Spanish society when they are put under so much stress and under so much difficulties when they are very young. So what we try to do is we have two lines of work. First of all, we create instances for coexistence between young Spanish people who are volunteers at our NGO and also young migrants. Why do we create these instances? Because we believe that by giving the opportunity for young migrants to meet more people their age who have different perspectives, as Vivian was saying earlier, who are from very different contexts, very different social classes, we can have two different outcomes. One, and the most important one, is that these young migrants get to widen their friendship and their social network so that they can have a better and real inclusion in Spain. So having Spanish friends that can connect them to potential employers is very helpful for young migrants. And also, by giving these instances for intercultural dialogue and acknowledging each other as humans and not just as numbers or as the foreign minors collective, we create awareness. And the people that come to participate in our coexistence spaces, the Spanish people, after they participate, they are much more aware of the problematics of the young migrant people, because obviously it's a very difficult topic to get to know if you're not like fully into it, because there's a lot of secrets, there's a lot of hidden information that obviously the government doesn't want the civil society to know, because it's crazy that we leave these little children alone when they turn 18. And so by giving the Spanish people the chance to know how everything is developing in their country, we create advocates, we create allies that can help us to raise more awareness and to transform the society that we have right now. So giving the chance to educate not only migrants in like a laboral and like a skills way, but we also create the chance for Spanish people to rebel against the system and try to advocate for their new friends that are in this situation, and we don't want them to suffer and have these difficulties. So that's our first way of working. So giving these coexistence spaces. And the other way that we work is that we facilitate social and labor inclusion by trying to get them scholarships, apprenticeships, trying to connect them with potential employees, giving them the uniform, trying to give these better curriculum so that they can have better skills for employment, which they don't necessarily have. The future that we have ahead is that we obviously need funding, and we need the collaboration of the social society to be able to support our programs and to raise more awareness so that more people can join us and we can have a greater impact in the young migrants that we are helping, be able to reach more people, have more programs, more support, and be able to help as many people as possible and create a better environment for them to come to Spain and for people in Spain to welcome these young migrants when they come.
Thank you so much, Nuria, just in time. This has been two great presentations, Victor. So Arendia, Visharo, would you like to offer some comments? I would love to start with Visharo maybe this time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nuria, and thank you, Victor. Very great projects that you have developed and implement. And I think the society is really benefiting from this, especially the migrants. Mine was first, maybe we can start with Victor's project. Very interesting indeed, and I love the numbers that are coming out of this project, you know, in terms of employment, in terms of scholarship that has been given to the migrants. My question is, are these, you know, numbers sustainable, and how far is it? You know, do you follow up with them, you know, after they, you know, get employment or they start their own social enterprises? How do you see the impact? What is the percentage? Maybe you can tell us that has sustained that status quo and maybe will be there for a longer time. Number two is also this aspect of social change or social exclusion. You are considering helping refugees to overcome their problems of discrimination and social exclusion and the stigma they face. So this, for example, allows them to feel confident to be able to be productive and so forth. How can you tell us more about this? Is this something that you're considering also within your project? And maybe who are the partners or people you're partnering with or engaging with in this project, especially on the market or connecting these migrants to the market? And lastly, the biggest challenge of social enterprise is coming up with good business model to stay afloat of or becoming profitable in this case. So how are you doing this apart from the trainings in the programs? That's it for Victor. And coming to Nuria, a very great presentation as well. I like how you are, transforming these teenagers' lives, who are kicked out, and frustrated to start their own lives, after, going through all the challenges they have gone through, migration, and then coming in expecting to be supported, and then the support is cut off at some times and they become homeless. One is to do you have, this intergenerational learning, which help different, these new arrivals or new minors to learn lessons and how to survive, after them being kicked out, and also find some kind of support or referral mechanisms to enable them integrate. This is very beneficial. We have done it here, we've done it in Somalia and in many other places. They are able to learn from the older generations who are already there and survived. Do you have these, or are you, planning to integrate this initiative? Yeah, and I think what are some of the challenges that you're also facing? I've seen that you've mentioned the issue of policies, frameworks, but also the political will to integrate and support these people. But what are some of the other challenges you have faced, implementing this project? Thank you.
Erendira?
Yeah. Great projects, you both. I have to say that one of the reasons that I accepted to be here, it was because you both have amazing projects. Like, I got just some briefing. So I'm very happy to even know more about them and all the amazing things you're doing. So yeah, I will go first with Victor. I have one question regarding you said that you want to expand probably in other refugee settlements. Have you, with this idea in mind, do you know how many people you would need to do that? Like, would you be willing to train them, and what would be, if that would be within the capacities that your project has so far? Also around the investment fund that you're trying to do now. Have you looked into crowdfunding? This might be some really good idea to get more funds. And also it would be a way in which I think you could continue to train people on the labs, on the skills, on the digital skills. And to Nuria, I have two questions. Firstly, where do you mainly work in Spain? Like, in which regions or in which cities? Because I think, especially now that you're looking for funding and collaboration, there are particular cities, I forgot the name of the project, but I can look it for you, in which a particular cities from Spain adhere to multi-level governance policy of migration, in which they have more money that they're willing to give to projects that involve integration of refugees, and mostly actually are for unaccompanied minors or people that have been left out of this. And I know some of the people that are working there. So if you could tell us where are you mainly working, and otherwise, you can also try, like I mentioned to Victor, crowdfunding. I think lots of amazing things have been accomplished through these projects, and you can involve even a potential global audience rather than just the only countries. And maybe also looked into the CEAR. Maybe the CEAR might be willing to partner somehow, depending on the regions that you're working.
Thank you so much, Erendira, for your questions too. So now we inverse the order. Nuria, you can start speaking, and then Victor, you can answer.
Okay, so I will answer first to Erendira. We mainly work in the Andalusia region in Spain because it's where most young immigrants come to the coast of Spain because they arrive in boats, and also the Canary Islands, but we are mostly working in Andalusia because in Sevilla is where the NGO was founded, because the president and the vice president are from Sevilla. But we are also working together with the Sevilla city, like I don't know how to say it, but like the principal, let's say, and we are having some money that we are given by the city of Sevilla and also some other villages around it. But yeah, we are trying to connect more with the local authorities, let's say, because as you were saying, sometimes they have this little bit of money that they can help us with for migration issues or young youth issues, let's say. And so we are trying to connect with them. So thank you very much. I will look into the CEAR and I will connect with you later so to see if we can get to know other alternatives that you can know of. And to answer to Bisharo, it's very interesting what you said about intergenerational dialogue, let's say, between the young migrants that are currently arriving to Spain and the ones that have already survived this very difficult step. We are currently working with different NGOs that are working on that same page as us, as young foreign minors that come unaccompanied. But it's an issue that is not as old, let's say, because the first unaccompanied minors started coming to Spain in the early 2000s, so it's not a very old phenomenon. But some young leaders, well, not that young now, because when they arrived they were younger, but now they are getting older. They have been coming forward in the civil society to help the young people that are coming now. So yes, it's very interesting what you were saying, and we are definitely trying to connect that with our people that we are working with so that they can have better role models and examples of how to survive this kind of crisis that they are living when they are turning 18. Also, you were speaking about what challenges do we face in terms of policymaking or more governance stuff. And the thing is that with how the migration law is right now in Spain, they only have 3 months after they turn 18 to have everything like solved out. And that's a problem because 3 months is very little time to get a new home, to get a new job, to finish your education, to be able to have a new job, to learn Spanish properly, to get a new job. So it's very little time to complete everything that they were having before, just in time, so that they can renew their residence permit. So I think the biggest challenge that we have is time. We are running out of time when they turn 18. That's why we try to work with them when they are only 16 or 17, so that we have a little bit more room to be able to improve everything and get them these skills to be able to come out successfully out of this challenge that we have. So I think the most challenging thing is the time that we have due to the policy making, the time that they give. But if they were given more time, it would be much easier and way less traumatic for them and a more doable thing than what it is right now, because it's very challenging right now. And if they don't have everything in time, they will go back to being irregular migrants. And that's even more dangerous because then everything is way more difficult. So yeah.
Thank you, Nuria. Victor?
Yeah, I was actually struggling with the internet. Yeah, let me start with okay, how are we going, how do we make this sustainable? Okay, I did not get it, what kind of sustainability, if it is in the for the entrepreneurs. However, we have different partners we are working with. That was another question, so I'll come back to the sustainability later on. We work with ILO since 2019. We've been prototyping the way we're going to work together, and we are growing in our relationship, which is quite good. About the business model, our concept actually in the U incubator and prototype, what we normally do, even with the prototyping fund, it is to validate the business models. Yeah, in that particular time, the ideas are iterating, validating different aspects of the social business model. So for them to transit actually from the U prototype to start doing the U accelerate, it's because their businesses have been validated already by the customers, the number of sales, the sustainable customers that they already have, and the business itself, where the business viability. So we do actually a lot of follow-up. When I share the story of Patient, the botanical repellent jelly, we started with him in 2018, and he only developed his business in 2020. So so it actually, we do not leave anyone. We start with you, we go with you. Our aim, our goal, it is to see you starting a social enterprise or get an employment, or at least do something. So the first scholars we started with, we still in contact, and the ones, even some go and come back to Unleash to again continue from where they stopped. So there is actually a very good structure for follow-up. And the other question is, how do we want to expand? We already have an expansion model, and it's a very interesting concept, because we are going to be having people within Unleashed, experience Unleashed, learn from us, prototype, and get feedbacks and establish themselves. Start slow but sure. I would wish actually to share our concept if you are interested, so that you can see our mechanism, where we would like to do that. But then it's really, really feasible and sustainable. Even we do not need a lot of money to start that, because the idea is to see. In the past, we've been actually we've been facing challenges of how do we do with how do we sustain the places. But then we already have a 3-year plan model, where if you are to establish another hub, and we can also support you. Actually, the ones who will start entrepreneurship hubs, Unleash entrepreneurship hubs, they will again undergo the acceleration phase, so that they become sustainable. So there is actually an interesting model around that. I wish to explain a lot. The investment fund, actually, we are looking for impact investors who would wish to join their hands to establish that pool of fund, because we need actually funding to invest in the social enterprises. Where if we've ever tried a crowdfunding, crowdfunding needs a lot of network. So for me, I would be happy if one would support Unleash to create a crowdfunding for that. Then that would be a very, very interesting. It's all about who are the people you are interesting. There is a whole system around crowdfunding. So right now we actually get funding through relationships and other people, and we work other NGOs that we work with. So the crowdfunding we have never tried. Unless if I skip the question, then please remind me.
Thank you so much, Victor. I don't know if Bishara or Indira, you want to feedback on something they have said, or even if Nuria, you want to feedback Victor, or Victor, Nuria, if you have something else to add.
Yes, I wanted to thank, I wanted to thank Victor for participating, and I am so happy that we were both on the topic of migration. I think that your project is amazing, and I am so happy that we got to connect and be able to try to work on some things together on the future. Let's see how we can connect that. And also thank you very much to Bishara and Erendira for your feedback and your commentaries. It was very much appreciated. And thank you to Puerta de Africa and the Ayoka Fellowship for having us today.
Oh, is it me? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, thank you actually for this opportunity for presenting to the audience. Yeah, Nuria, thank you also for coming. Actually, I'm a social cohesion master trainer by ILO. So as you deal with your projects, I'll be happy to see where I can intervene, because I know there is a lot of social cohesion interventions that are needed in your interventions. Thank you also, Vivian, and Puerta de Africa and Ayoka Fellowship. It has been a very interesting opportunity. I'm happy to meet the I think Ali, and the names are not yet in the head, but I would like to engage more with you again. If you find areas of interest that we would actually engage more, for me, I'll be happy. I'll be really, really, really happy. We are open for discussions and learning, and that would be great from Unleashed and me. Thank you.
Thank you. I can come in?
Yeah, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe before I make my last remark, I would also like to tell Victor, there are also more opportunities to explore with the international organizations like IOM, UNHCR, UN Women, FAO, UNDP, and so forth, in terms of social entrepreneurship and in relation to migrants. This is somewhere you can explore, and we can talk later about this. Crowdfunding also very important. This will enhance, community contribution, not only within Kampala, but also from diaspora, which is something that is gaining momentum now, and they want to support this kind of social entrepreneurship. And of course, increases ownership within the community and more acceptability. These are some of the things that you can basically look at. But thank you very much, Nuria and Victor, for sharing these great projects. I believe that your impact will not go unnoticed, and supporting migrants, especially the vulnerable migrants, to integrate but also have durable solutions is the best way to go, because of all the challenges that we've seen around the world, basically. And thank you also to Erendira for having, for us interacting in this space, and I've learned from you. And thank you, Vivian and the team. It's always a pleasure to engage in such kind of platform to learn, but also share experiences and capacities to ensure that we find solutions, common ground to support vulnerable people, especially migrants in this case. So working together enables us have a safe and stable continents, that is Africa and Europe, and also with well-governed migration. Thank you very much.
I will try not to be that not to repeat, but it was amazing to see these projects. Thank you very much. I want to highlight the importance of your projects, and this is a way that I guess you can also pitch it to potential investors or also collaborators as the difference between your projects and other big NGOs or other big organizations which only portray immigrants or refugees in a really victimizing, you cannot do anything way. I will give you stuff because you are not able to do. So this is, I think, something that you can really highlight of these projects, and it's something that I really like, the part of which you're giving them the tools to become self-dependent, self-reliant agents. And in that sense, I think on the point of Bisharo, like more sustainable projects, I think it's already amazing the kind of partnerships you're doing. Nuria, I would also invite you to look a lot of the small organizations, grassroots organizations that have been done, for example, in Lavapiés by different former unaccompanied minors. One, it's Courage. The other one, I forgot the name, is something Bangla. And these are things that also can motivate them. There are other kind of educational projects in Barcelona on digital trainings for refugees. So you could also potentially collaborate. You also allowing them to see other, like expanding their network within Spain. At least if they have the residence permit, at least they can move within Spain. So this is something that would enhance them to create even larger networks. And again, thank you so much, Bisharo. It was really a pleasure to hear you. I learned even myself so much. Thank you. Thank you, Vivian, and all the people in Casa Africa and Porta de Africa for this amazing opportunity. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Erendira and Bisharo, for coming and joining us. So now we have 10 minutes left. I don't know if the floor, if the audience has any question that would like to do to our fellows or to the speakers. Alexia?
Yeah, so thanks for the debate. It was really interesting. And just like to link with the last comment of Erendira, but also with the one of Bisharo. Can you hear me well? No.
Not really good. If you can speak a bit louder.
Yeah, sorry. So
Thank
just to make a link between the last comments of Erendira and Bisharo, which were highlighting these projects because of their character, that are like empowering migrants and refugees and not taking them as victims, and more showing all of the contribution they have to do in societies. I just was wondering, to which extent are we really are you using, or are you really potentiating the collaboration with state initiatives, as they were asking? Also, because as the beginning of the discussion was that question of how civil society and private initiatives are adding up, to states work. So how much are you able? How much do you feel able to highlight your projects and make them recognized by authorities? Because I feel like you're adding up to efforts that have also been made. I think of Nuria, and I know about some cities in Spain that are taking this political willingness to receive migrants. But I also think of Victor and African countries, having this really empowering young people to create jobs themselves and like start entrepreneurship. So yeah, how do you feel as young people able to make your initiative recognized? Where are the obstacles you're finding? Have you tried already? That was a bit my question.
Thank you, Alexia.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question, because I think that my internet is a little bit unstable, so I think that it cut off a little bit.
Yeah, just like how much are you able to make your project recognized for more like the state side or your public initiatives? And where are the obstacles you're finding? Because you perfectly said how much your project is adding up to, yeah, state obligations, let's say.
We are trying to work towards that, because obviously it's kind of difficult to reach those kind of big spheres, let's say. But we luckily have our vice president is currently in the Ayoka fellowship as well. She's a young change maker from 2 years ago. So luckily we have that contacts that we can reach. And we are also working more on our allyships and trying to connect with more other foundations, other companies, other businesses that can help us reach those spheres that we will try to reach, as to advocate more for our people. But we are kind of being in a challenge for that, because we also feel like the topic that we manage is obviously very political, and we want to be able to manage that very carefully, as to not say anything that can be taken the wrong way, or that can have the wrong outcome for the young migrants. So we are tackling that challenges, and we are trying to make our way into that sphere. So if you have any like contacts, or you want to help us in any way, of course, reach out to us, so that we can get in our way towards that.
Victor, do you want to answer Alexia's question?
I had actually a challenge to get the question very well, but I'll be happy.
Alexia?
Yeah, just quickly, what are the obstacles or how difficult is it for you to make your project that is really aligned with, I think, state willingness to promote entrepreneurship and young people creating jobs and migrants being more of like a power in society than a charge? How are you able to recognize your project and make state or public bodies support you as you're adding up to their function?
I don't know if it was only my challenge, but cut some cutting. But okay, what I got is that am I able to make get a public oh the question did not reach to me very well. However, I think it's all about how do I is unleashed and entrepreneurs able to get a public attention. Hello.
Yes, I just wrote the question, so that could be easy.
Yeah, she wrote that. How
Okay.
are you able to make your project recognized by public institutions? And Victor, you have to explain us about the visit of the princess, right?
Yeah. You see, sometimes, to be honest, I'm like, if we get that public attention, the idea is the gain after. Because the idea for me would be like, if Unleashed is visited by the princess, then there is a follow-up. You see, like we've seen ambassadors coming to Unleashed, appreciating what we are doing. But for me, I would wish to have a follow-up after that. But the idea, you see, most of the time we're already friends with the office of the prime minister, because most of the time when we have such visits, we have also the local governments coming and getting to know about analyst. So I think what we need to do is to also create a strategic follow-up with the local government, or also, and then for sometimes it is hard, for instance, to do a follow-up with the princess. Yeah, how will I be able to do that? So there are some constraints, but I wish actually that is happening. But also, I think this is also what I think I would also, I don't know if Ayoka Fellowship will do that, but in attending conferences about refugees, about migration, this will be some of the events that will actually support us to create such a recognition, and more of raising our voice, and making sure that people or the environment knows that we are there. What I'm happy about is that already the Office of the Prime Minister here within the refugee settlement, they have accepted our positioning as empowerment zones. So I would wish that is also recognized within Uganda, in Africa, maybe worldwide, and then we see what we can contribute to the ecosystem.
And also I may also include a bit that with Casa Africa, we're also trying to work on that a bit. For example, we tried to, well, we sent the projects to IFID. We talked about the projects with the Director General of Casa Africa, who has been explaining some of your projects, the projects of the fellows during their interventions. Me, myself, during my public interventions in some events with high-level politicians. I also always, like, Victor is just like one of these projects that is easy to showcase all the time when talking about migration, because it in Europe, concretely, and yeah. So yeah, I think that we tried to do that also a bit from Ayoka Fellowship, but we hope that for the next cohort, and we're gonna keep having you in our radar. We can put more effort into mainstreaming your projects in the media in Europe and etc. Well, Bisharo has written a message. I don't know if you want to read it out loud, Bisharo.
Yeah. Mine was to also just add on to Victor that engaging the government can be challenging sometimes. So if you can be able to identify or map up stakeholders, especially relevant government representative, and then invite them to your projects, during the inception, during the project implementation, and so forth. This will also help you, buy in from the government and help you implement and also scale up your project. Thank you.
And also, like, adding to what Bishara is saying, I think that when the princess, I don't remember whose country's princess, but visited you, that wasn't a great example that the type of project that you are leading, both of you, Nuria and Victor, can be very sensitive to people. So for example, I don't know if you remember Angela Merkel crying with a refugee girl. So like, these are very moving images. And I think that if you try to portray your projects to very specific politicians, that's true. Generally female leaders, etc. You may get visits like the princess visit, or yeah, other ones. Well, so it's already 8 o'clock. We've had a very intense discussion here today. Thank you so much for staying here all the time. Thank you, Erendira and Bisharo, for your time, for your ideas, for your knowledge. Bishara is already a permanent member of this house. She comes every time. We always invite her, and we enjoy having her here. Now I hope that, Erendira, you're gonna become also a frequent Puerta de Africa collaborator, because your interventions have been outstanding. So thank you. Thank you, Nuria and Victor, for working so hard during this year, for your patience with the difficulties we've been having, for your implication, for the work you've put into this project. You've done amazing. I'm sure that you're gonna keep growing and scaling up your projects, and I hope that we can see the fruits of the revolution that we are undergoing, because at the end, working for a new way of relationship between humans, as it is a case of migration, is an revolutionary act. We're going against the wind, to say somehow. So you should feel very proud of the efforts you're making. And again, I want to thank the team of the conference, Alexia and Musa, for organizing this magnific event. And the days to come are also going to be magnific. And all the team of Ayoka Fellowship for their hard work during this year. And I think that with this, we can close our first day. If you want to share in one word how you feeling after this, one word, very fast, and after we can, we can close and finish this event.
Hopeful.
So you're feeling hopeful.
Hopeful. Better future, I think.
Excited for what to come. And looking
I'm feeling
forward
grateful.
Project.
I'm grateful that we had this opportunity to share our projects and for everyone listening to what we had to say. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Nuria, you've taken my word, so I'm going to say I'm happy. Thank you.
I'm happy. So yeah, I'm excited also to see that young people from across both continents are so excited to be talking together about this. And I hope that you can keep in touch, that you can keep working, that you can help each other, and that all together we can build a better migration governance and better integration policies for the good of humanity. So have a nice evening, morning, depending on which part of the world you are. Have a good rest and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.